Hi, third graders. Today we're going to learn about seeds. Last week we were learning all about how we can inherit traits from our parents. Well, the same thing is true for plants. This week we will start our study of plants and we'll start by learning about seeds. Seeds contain genes that we have been learning about. When plants reproduce, they make seeds, and those seeds will provide a plant with the information so that they can inherit traits from their parent plants. For example, a pumpkin seed will grow into a pumpkin plant that has the same leaves, fruit, and vines as the parent. And a marigold seed will grow into a marigold plant and will inherit the traits of a marigold. I made a little video so that you guys can try and experiment at home. Actually, today's lesson is that you're going to watch this video. There are 3 different science experiments that you can do at home, and you can watch the videos. You can try one of them, 2 of them, all of them. They require some materials, but the materials are really easy to find. So for this first one, this is about observing different seeds. These pumpkin seeds grow up to be this pumpkin plant, and these marigold seeds will grow up to be these marigolds. Marigold seeds will always look like this, and pumpkin seeds will always look like this. Here's a video about how you can learn to observe different types of seeds.
Okay, so one of the things you can do as we start learning about plants is take a really close look and observe some seeds. Now, to do this, I actually just picked these up when I was at the grocery store. And so I got 4 different kinds of seeds to compare and look at really closely, but you don't have to do that. You can buy seeds, or maybe you have some seeds at your house. You could also even go out in your backyard and look for some seeds, like a pine cone and an acorn, dandelion seeds. So you can find some seeds and take a really close look at them. Now, to make an observation, you're going to use your senses. And so your 5 senses are seeing, touching, hearing, smelling, and tasting. We're not going to taste anything. That's one of our science lab rules that you should remember. But mostly we're going to use our sense of sight and our sense of touch. So here you can see these little teeny tiny seeds are lettuce seeds, and you can look at them and see how small they are. You can touch them. Now, these seeds contain all of the genes that we've been learning about to grow into this plant. So the parent plants look like this, and in these seeds are the traits that the parent is going to pass on to the offspring, and the seeds will grow into a baby plant, which will have many of the same traits as the parents. Now, it might not look exactly the same, but it's going to look really similar to this because it's going to have a lot of the same traits. Here's some examples of some pumpkin seeds. So again, you can see these seeds look a lot different than the lettuce seeds. They're bigger, you can touch them, they feel smooth, and this seed will grow into a plant that looks like this. Because these seeds came from the parent plant, they will pass on the genes and therefore the traits to grow pumpkins. Here are some examples of sunflower seeds. So sunflower seeds actually have a different color. They're not white or gray like the other seeds. They have like a black part with a stripe on them. You can feel them. They feel hard, but they almost have a hollow feeling inside. And again, these seeds contain the genes to grow a new plant that will look like this plant, because that's what the parents look like. So this is for a sunflower plant. And then I have some bean seeds. And again, you can take a look at these. They have little black dots on them. They are hard, so you can make observations. So you don't have to observe the same seeds that I did, but you could find some seeds of your own and do some close observing to learn more about what seeds look like and feel like.
Okay, so that's one experiment that you can try at home. Remember, you don't have to go out and buy seeds. Even if you eat an apple, you could observe the apple seeds or the orange seeds that you have. So you really can do this with any type of seeds that you can get your hands on. The second example of experiment is also observing seeds, but for this one, we're going to do something different. So for this, you'll need one type of seed, but you will observe them when they're dry, and then you'll soak them in water and observe them when they are wet or soaked seeds. So here I use bean seeds. Now at the grocery store, if you go into the dry where the beans are, don't get canned beans. Those are already soaked. But if you buy a package of dry beans, you could do the exact experiment that I did. But you can do this with any type of seeds that you can find.
Okay, now for the second seed experiment, you can do some more observing using your sense of sight and your sense of touch, and you can compare a seed that is dry to a seed that is wet. So now in this container, I have some bean seeds. These are just dry beans. And over here, I have some beans that are, you can see, soaked in water. So this is filled with water, and these beans have been soaking for about 24 hours since yesterday. And so now I'm going to take a really close look like a scientist would. Scientists often record their observations. And so I made a little chart. So you can get a piece of paper. You can title it Seed Observations. I'm going to compare the dry bean to the soaked bean. So you could do this with any seed. So if you have other seeds at home, if your mom and dad have a bag of dried beans, you could take those, and you don't have to soak this many. You can just take a couple and soak them. And so what you would do is you would take a really close look and compare these. So here I have my dry bean and my wet bean. So the first thing I'm going to do is look at the color. So when I look at the color, you can see my dry bean is very white, but my wet bean is a little bit more yellow. So up here on my seed observations, I would write white and more of a yellow color. And depending on what seeds you do, you could make those kinds of observations also. Then it asks for the shape. And so the shape, it's not really a circle. I would say it's more like an oval. And this one's also like an oval, but a little bigger. But I would still kind of think they have a similar shape, kind of like an oval. Now texture. Texture is a word that you use to describe what something feels like. So for this, you're going to use your sense of touch. And some texture words are hard and soft, wet and dry, rough and smooth. What does it feel like? So this bean seed, to me, feels hard and smooth. So I would record hard and smooth. And this bean seed, oh my goodness, it feels so soft. It's definitely wet. So this one is soft and wet. Now for odor, odor is another word for what something smells like. So that's another one of your senses. So you would just pick up your bean, smell it, compare them. It's really hard to describe. It smells like a bean to me, but this one really has no odor. And this one has what I would call a faint bean odor. I can definitely smell something. And you would write down what it smells like to you. And then the size. So both of the seeds are pretty small, not as small as those lettuce seeds were, but they're pretty small. But I can clearly see one is bigger than the other. And I would say that because we soaked it in water, the soaked bean is bigger than the dry bean. So I would write down bigger than the dry bean. And this one I might write smaller than soaked bean. And you could write down your own observations depending on what you see happening in your experiment and with the type of seeds you're using. And that's how you would make an observation comparing a dry seed to a soaked seed.
Okay, so that's another experiment you could try at home. Again, you would need some materials. You would need to get 2 of one type of seed. You want to compare the same seed. So if you're using apple seeds, you're going to have to dry out an apple seed and you're going to have to soak an apple seed. If you have some beans, they don't have to be these beans. They could be kidney beans. and make sure that one is dry and one is soaked. And I don't know if you heard in the directions, I soaked my bean seed for 24 hours. So I put it in one day and then I let it soak all the way to the next day to make sure it got wet enough. All right, so you can try out that experiment. Now, the third one is super cool. I think you're really going to like it. And for this one, you're going to need that soaked bean. So we're going to pry open a seed and we're going to look inside. And for this one, I didn't draw the diagram, but you could draw a diagram and label the diagram. That would be something that scientists would do when they were observing a seed like this.
Okay, so the third experiment you can do is you can take your soaked bean or your soaked seed and you can open it up. Now, if you have a soaked bean, then this will happen exactly like I'm going to show you. But if you have a different kind of seed, you might discover some other things about the inside of the seed, but you can look for some specific parts. So the first thing you're going to do is on the outside of the seed, you're going to use your fingernail and you're going to just peel off what's called the seed coat. And so you can see it's this really thin thing, and all around the seed, there's this seed coat. So you're going to take that off. And that's the seed coat. So now I have the inside part of the seed. Now, if you look at the seed, you're going to see there's a little line. It's called the seed scar. And you can pry that open and divide your seed into two parts. Now this part is really interesting and I'm hoping you can see it. These are actually the leaves. So when the seed grows, that's where the leaves will come from. This little part right here is called the embryo. That's the actual plant that's going to grow. It contains all that genetic material we've been talking about, the genes that will give it the trait to grow into a bean plant. This inside part is called the cotyledon, and that contains all the nutrients to help the plant grow. So those are some important parts of a plant seed. Now, you can try this with a couple different seeds. If you have a bean seed like this, definitely do it because it will open up exactly like I showed you. But I'd love to hear what happens with other seeds if you can find the same parts. So remember, this is the leaves right here. This is the embryo, which is going to turn into the baby plant. And this is called the cotyledon, which contains all of that the nutrients to help the baby plant grow as it starts to germinate. Okay, I hope you guys try this experiment at home.
Okay, so there's a third experiment that you can try. I think that's really cool. So if you can get your hands on a bean seed and soak it, get it nice and soft for 24 hours, and then you can try that experiment and look for those parts of the seed. So for today, when you finish watching this video, try these 3 experiments if you have the materials. 1, observe a variety of seeds that you find around your house. Go outside and look in your backyard for seeds. 2, compare a dry seed to a soaked seed and record your observations. Or 3, open up a soaked seed and look inside. Can you find the leaves, the embryo, that's the baby plant, the cotyledon, that's the nutrients for the baby plant to grow? When you finish, you can mark this lesson as done. There's nothing for you to turn into this for this lesson. If you can't do all 3 experiments, that's okay. You got to watch me do them. I just always think it's much more fun if you get to try it yourself. So that's why I encourage you to try out these experiments. But just watching Mrs. Sherman do it, you can learn a lot from that as well. So once you finish watching this video and trying any of these experiments, if you can, then you're all set for today and you can mark this lesson as done. I hope you have fun learning about seeds.